All right. Several questions have come my way in regards to sparring. All right. So today we're going to talk about sparring. But sparring in boxing is different than sparring in mixed martial arts. First, we're going to talk about sparring in boxing. Sparring for boxing is mandatory. It's mandatory. Okay, you're simply not going to develop a valid defense. You're not going to develop a certain immunity to taking punches. The shock of taking punches is something that you definitely have to get used to. This is why sometimes you might look at Marvin Hagler. If you haven't seen Marvin Hagler fight, who happens to be my favorite fighter, many people believe it's Muhammad Ali. It's not Muhammad Ali, who's my favorite fighter. Uh, and because I could relate, I mean, he's one of my favorite fighters, obviously, or should be obvious, but Marvin Hagler's somebody I could relate to. Marvin Hagler's my favorite fighter of all time. You might have seen him punching himself in the head to get used to the shock of getting punched in the head. Okay, you definitely have to spar to be a good boxer. All right, but do you have to spar hard? No, you don't have to spar hard. In fact, I would recommend you don't spar hard. Okay, sparring about 50% most of the time is good. Now, how do you know that it's 50%? Well, you don't know if it's exactly 50%, but you do know if you're trying to hurt someone. Okay, if you're not trying to hurt someone, but you were trying to learn as well as teach that individual at the same time that you're learning, then you're generally going to be throwing at 50% even when no one is measuring the power of your blows. Okay, so you do have to spar when you're boxing. Should you spar all out all the time? No, you should not spar all out most of the time. Now, how important is sparring? Well, we can look at David Benavides. Let's talk about sparring and what it does for fighters. Okay? David Benavides, from what I understand, had only 15 amateur fights. That's it. 15 amateur bouts. But as far as I'm concerned, he's pound for pound one of the best fighters in the world. Right? He simply does not, people aren't talking about him beating Canelo Alvarez. They're really not talking about David Benavides. David Benavides, in a way, reminds me of Manny Pacquiao. People who hated Floyd Mayweather talked about Manny Pacquiao, right? But those people who talked about Manny Pacquiao and loved him because they thought he would beat Floyd Mayweather probably would not introduce Manny Pacquiao to their daughter if he was looking for a wife, okay? Many of these people who love Manny Pacquiao because they thought he would beat Floyd Mayweather would probably break a glass after he drank out of it in their home, if they invited him into their home at all. David Benavides is that kind of guy. I don't hear anybody talking about David Benavides unless they use him to try to imply that Canelo Alvarez is cherry picking or Canelo Alvarez hasn't fought anyone. Okay? The reality, though, is David Benavides, in my opinion, is one of the best fighters pound for pound. Maybe top 10, maybe not, but I don't see why he wouldn't be a top 10 pound for pound fighter, right? He had 15 amateur fights. That's it. Now, yes, he was overweight and he had to lose some weight, and that's another reason why he didn't fight as an amateur. But the big reason why he didn't fight as an amateur was because his father simply told him that as an amateur, he would pick up some bad habits, and to avoid that, he just kept him sparring in the gym. That's how really important sparring is to a boxer. Next, James Toney, as far as I'm concerned, next to Sweet Georgie Benton, is really the only bona fide Philly shell fighter. Okay, James Toney is the most bona fide Philly shell fighter. He is closest to the original Philly shell than Floyd Mayweather, period. And the reason is because Philly shell was designed not to have to move your feet. If you're moving your feet a lot, you're not doing the Philly shell. And as a 63-year-old who was taught by some of the best fighters coming out of the Times Square gym in New York City, including Saul Mamby, I will tell you that the Philly shell was not designed by professional fighters. The Philly shell was designed by gym warriors who actually most of them didn't fight amateur. They had very few amateur fights. They had full-time jobs. Sometimes they just had to come. They didn't have time to do road work, so they developed a way to kind of rest while they were defending, hence where they held their hands, the way they laid on the ropes. Really, when you look at how the Philly shell is supposed to be done, really, it's James Toney who was the pure Philly shell fighter more than Floyd Mayweather, okay? It was James Toney. Now, getting back to sparring and the importance of sparring, it's very well known that James Toney used to walk into the Kronk gym and just love to spar, no matter who it was. Okay, and we know that the Kronk gym was full of great fighters taught by Manny Pacquiao, taught by Emmanuel Stewart and Pops Miller, and other great trainers there. He had a great training crew. It wasn't just Emmanuel Stewart. He had a great training crew there. But the bottom line is that when you look at James Toney, I believe he had 33 amateur fights. Now, if you look at one of the greatest fighters of all time in James Toney, and the top three defenses of all time is James Toney. Of all time, the top three defenses, one of the top three defenses is James Toney. He had maybe 33 amateur fights. Okay? But he sparred on a regular basis. Now, before I go in further and I move on to MMA, we're going to look at what it does for Mexican fighters. If you look at Jose Luis Castillo had some amateur fights. Okay? But really, if you look at him, and when we're talking about Jose Luis Castillo, we're talking about an individual who, in my opinion, beat Floyd Mayweather, or at least should have had a draw, retaining his lightweight title, and forcing Floyd to beat him in a rematch, and then only win the title, instead of Floyd getting a unanimous decision. When we look at Jose Luis Castillo, how did he learn to fight Floyd the way he fought him? He learned by sparring. Sparring who? Being a sparring partner of who? Julio Cesar Chavez. Okay? Julio Cesar Chavez was the one who beat Roger Mayweather, Floyd Mayweather's uncle. I believe he beat him twice. Okay? So Jose Luis Castillo had some amateur fights, but he really learned how to fight by being a sparring partner. Many Mexicans, in fact, most Mexicans, learn to fight, learn their craft, make a couple dollars, make enough money to eat by being sparring partners for professional fighters. So sparring in boxing is mandatory. It is mandatory. Sparring hard is not. You should be purposeful. You should be intentional whenever you are sparring. If any trainer has you sparring hard every single day, do not be too proud, or every day you walk in, do not be too proud to walk out. Okay? You can tell them Safe Carmen said, you can give them my email and tell them Safe Carmen said it's not necessary to spar hard every day. In fact, if you want me to be specific, really you should not be sparring hard any more than maybe one time every 2 weeks. The rest of the time it should be at 50%. Okay? Mixed martial arts. Sparring for mixed martial arts. Right? No one is going to tell you this. All right, I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to save you a lot of brain cells. I may save your life, or hopefully it's not that serious. I definitely will save you some brain cells, and will save you a great deal of money. Do you need to spar hard for mixed martial arts? Not really. You do need to spar hard enough to get used to getting hit with 4-ounce gloves. You do need to do that. When I was training MMA fighters for a promotional mixed martial arts promotional company, I was the talent scout. I was also the matchmaker, and when fighters specifically wanted to fight for our organization, I did train them. Okay, so when we look at training for mixed martial arts, should you be sparring all out? No, this is what you should be doing instead. Scenario training. Scenario training. Okay? Your trainer, if he hears this, or if your MMA instructor hears this, he's going to steal it. I want you to know if the training changed all of a sudden, I want you to know where he got it from. If you show him this video, he is going to tell you, yeah, maybe. I guarantee you he's going to switch up and he's going to experiment with what I'm saying. As an MMA teacher, you should not have your students sparring hard all the time. As an MMA student, you should not be sparring or allow yourself to be put in positions where you are sparring hard all the time. But you do have to spar hard enough to get used to getting hit with 4-ounce gloves. So again, backtracking, what should you be doing? You should be doing scenario training. What do I mean by scenario training? I'll give you a quick example off the top of my head. For example, you're in front of your opponent. He throws a hook. You block it. You throw your hook back. And when you throw your hook back, you shoot in. Okay, when you shoot in, you lift, or you go through some kind of trip, and you get position, top position, and then you go for a submission. You get back up. He throws the hook. You throw the hook back. and he defends from the hook and he shoots in. When he shoots in, you go down, he gets top position, then he goes for the submission. Another scenario drill will be perhaps that he throws a hook, you throw the hook back, you go to shoot, and he sprawls. When he sprawls, he does a sit out, he comes back, takes the back, flattens you out, and gets the rear naked choke. The next time he throws a hook, you cover from the hook, he shoots in, you get the sprawl, you do a sit out, come around to the back, get your hooks in, flatten them out, and you get a rear naked choke. That is a good scenario drill. I know most of you saying, wow, man, I didn't know this guy knew that much. I've been cross-training since 1976. 1993 when the Uma fight camp. 1993 when the UFC started. Me and 3 to 4 people that I used to train with in 1976, mixing karate, boxing, and wrestling together, we all looked at the television and said, it's about damn time. Okay, that's what me and my 3 black friends used to say when we looked at the UFC. When we looked at the UFC for the first time in 1993, we said it's about damn time, because we had been training since 1976 in cross training. Okay, so as MMA fighters, should you be sparring all out all the time? Absolutely not. You should be doing scenario drills, but you do need to spar hard enough to get used to a couple things. One, getting hit with 4-ounce gloves, and dealing with exhaustion and perhaps hyperventilating. You need to train hard enough for sure and spar hard enough for sure to know what it's like to be exhausted, to be patient enough in order to get your second win and taking it from there. But more than anything else, you do need to get used to getting hit with 4-ounce gloves. But should you be sparring all out? No. You should be working on scenario drills. My name is Safe Carmen. This is Uma Fight Camp. I'll see you in the next video.